Hey, welcome back, everybody. As promised, I am here with Major Justin Pitcock, and he's going to be giving us just some insight and a message about America United, which is our theme this year. As we've discussed a little bit, I think there's been some, of course, disappointment overall, and I share that disappointment with people on just having to cancel some of our festivities. But that definitely does not mean that we are not celebrating today our American independence. So we do still have things going on in town, and then of course there's Fourth at the Fields tonight at the Young County Arena, and I encourage you to go out there. It's free to attend, donations are welcome, but there's going to be a phenomenal fireworks show thanks to a lot of very generous sponsors. So attend that. Stay in your vehicles at all times. That does include the back of a truck. So if you want to get out and sit in the bed of a truck, as long as it's the vehicle you arrived in, I believe that's okay. But anyway, go out and show your pride for our American independence and celebrate together. Just also separate it a little bit. So anyway, I'm here with Justin, and he's come in to talk to us today, and we really appreciate you being here, Justin.
Well, thanks for having me, Krisa, and thanks for inviting me to be here. And wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for your invitation. So I know my parents are glad that I made the trip as well, and brought the kids, more importantly. But thanks for all the work that you put in, and I know Knox Bishop and the whole team that was working to put this event together. It's as most things in 2020 happen. These are the way things go, and I think y'all made a tough but good call on canceling the event and not bringing too many people together. But that said, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all the hard work that you did.
Absolutely.
To put together.
So I want to ask you, Justin, have you been overseas deployed during the 4th of July before?
Yes. I spent 2013 at Camp Bastion in Afghanistan, and I spent, I guess I was in Kuwait or Pakistan or somewhere in 2010, I think, for the 4th of July. No fireworks that were friendly, anyways. To be honest, I don't remember. That's an interesting question. If I gave it some more thought, I might think.
I didn't prep you at all.
No, yeah,
I
I don't remember. I do remember. Sometimes I like to read the Declaration of Independence sometimes, or at least the preamble on. And so when I'm not at the lake, which is where I'd most rather be on Independence Day, then I find some time to read the Declaration and just kind of think about the origins of the country. So I'm sure that's what I was doing if I didn't get to be at the lake.
Awesome. So in essence, is it okay for me to sum it up and say that even if you weren't able to be here celebrating with your family and friends, even if you couldn't do the normal fireworks show or the typical hamburger cookout, whatever it may be, you were still celebrating American independence on that day?
And I think, if there's one thing that this whole pandemic has taught us, is that, the way that we always do things isn't the only way. And it gives us the time for reflection. It's one that we all wish what wasn't going on, and that we could do whatever we wanted and continue living life like we normally have. But the thankful part, the good side, is it does allow for a lot more time for reflection, a lot more than some of us would like. But I always find those times are hard to come by, especially as you add children into your life and that kind of thing. To find the times to reflect, and this is certainly. There's more disruption with it, if you're trapped in your house with your kids all the time.
Yeah.
But that time to reflect is valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So one of the things I think that, and I shared this on Facebook or somewhere, but one of the things I've been reflecting on, during this time, and especially in having to cancel some of these activities that we were really looking forward to and put a lot of hard work, and I don't mean myself only, I mean there was a big committee of people that puts this on and makes it possible for the community. So, it is disappointing. It is hard to not have. It's also important that we do what's right for the community overall and for the health and safety. But one of the things I've been reflecting on is kind of some of the things that we take for granted. So, how we got our American independence and all the sacrifices made, the service, our servicemen and women that are overseas right now on this day, not celebrating like they would have or would have wanted to. So that's kind of one of the things I think I've been reflecting on more recently.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a great point, and I think anytime that we consider our own troubles, it's good to think about that. There's a lot of people in worse situations, and a lot of people doing it for our own safety and for our own independence. And I think it's fair to say in 1776 or several years before that, there were a lot of sacrifices going on, and just imagine the will it took to. You're standing in a room with somebody and you said, you know what, we're gonna leave Great Britain, the only country we've ever known, and form our own thing, and we're gonna go against them to do it. And some people didn't go along with it, right? It was about 50-50 for a long time, and so just that sacrifice to want to build something new and try to convince your countrymen to do it was tough, and then that starts a very long, and the Constitution wasn't written until 1789, so it took 15 years to get something nailed down. It's amazing to think about what they went through then, and then of course now there are several thousand United States flags on people's shoulders around the world today, ensuring the safety that we have and preserving kind of our. I talk about the U.S. Navy all the time, and our services give each other grief, but the U.S. Navy owning the oceans is just this great luxury that we've always had. It ensures world commerce can go on without being attacked by pirates. I spent a lot of time in 2010. We trained a lot for fighting pirates, right? And they would take a ship, and then we would go take it back. And we actually, I was in Pakistan at the time, but our group, our Marine Expeditionary Unit, went and took down a pirate ship while on our deployment in 2010. Same day that my squadron delivered 5.6 million pounds of food and aid to Indus River Valley flood victims in Pakistan. We dropped several bombs that killed high-value targets in Afghanistan from our Harrier squadron, and our Cobra squadron took down a pirate ship all on the same day.
Wow.
Our CO was pretty excited that day.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Yeah.
Well, so our theme this year, as you know, for the parade and for our activities going on, was intended to be and is still America United. And that theme was chosen 4 months ago, maybe more. So then, of course, there's been more recent events that I think have either created more unity or more division, depending on the person, the place, the perspective, all of that. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts on America United.
Yeah, when you asked me to come speak, you told me that was what the theme was, and even through your email, I could see the tongue-in-cheek a little bit at the time. And this was 2 or 3 weeks ago after George Floyd's killing, that we all witnessed on in video, and the unrest that exists in our country was pretty apparent. And so when I thought about what it means to be united, we were talking before this about President Madison and how he wrote in Federalist Number 9 he was worried about factions, right? And I think back to 2001 when I was a freshman at Texas A&M, and on September 11th when the towers fell, how absolutely devastating that was to the country, and then how united we were, and that was peak unitedness, let's say. And then I can say today we're at trough unitedness in my lifetime, which is not that old, but I think in 1968 and the Civil War, certainly things were more divisive. But I shared this with you, but the divisiveness in our country is really it's something I struggle with, and a lot of my friends and fellow veterans struggle with, is coming back from a war zone and then seeing your country fight with each other, not even take them as fellow citizens, and just because of the ideas that they have or the experiences, just dismissing them offhand like they would an enemy, like the Taliban, right? And there's nothing more disheartening as as a service member to come home and witness that. And I mentioned President Madison because he was thinking about this. He was thinking about factions when he wrote in Federalist Number 9 about what to do about factions. And the whole idea of self-governance is based on free will, and therefore factions are going to exist. And he was pondering. He said, "Well, what do we do about factions? There's only two ways to get rid of them. One is an autocratic society, and we don't want that. And the other is to let them take over, and we don't want that. So, like, what do we do?" And so his idea, and he quote said, "Extend the union." He said, "Bring them all under the tent. That way, it'll dilute their power, and that's the best we can do. That's the best we can hope for divisiveness." And so I think about that when and today when we're dismissing each other and we'd rather shout our ideas over those of others. That's exactly what he was worried about, and especially in a two-party system, which I worry about a lot. Also, one party takes power, which happens all the time now, and that's your faction, and that's your cultural group, and that's exactly what President Madison was worried about, is this huge divisiveness and a faction being able to take over. So what do we do about that? I don't know. Is that I often wonder. There's several of my, like I said, fellow veterans that think the same thing, and those that we're witnessing this from are loud, and that's who you see most of the time. But I have a feeling, and I think this is confirmed, that even if you haven't served, you're a military family, but if you're outside of that, do you feel that? Do you see that? Is that something you worry about, or are you worried about your team and your faction and making them better? I don't know the answer to that. I have a lot of faith in the American people, especially Graham, Texas. There's no better place than to walk around this town and see the people and just how friendly they are. And I know that they don't want that, but there's just something set up about our society that that's where we are today, and it's disheartening a little bit.
One of my favorite topics is tribalism, which I think is very similar to factions, but and I think it's natural to have a lot of small tribes, kind of like factions, but we have to have that big tribe too, that overall tribe where we can all agree that we're all one at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's a lot of things to think. We wrote the Declaration of Independence, and we said all men are created equal, and we tried to bring everyone under the tent, but we knew then that we weren't doing that, right? There was a whole class of people that were written out, slaves, and it says men, and they actually meant it then. We can look back now and say, well, men means women, right? But it definitely didn't. And it didn't even mean poor people, right? Even poor white people, poor white men still weren't written in. And so that was something that we knew at the beginning. And I think about it a lot in 1789 when they came to the 3/5 Compromise, etc. They wrote down in similar to the Federalist Papers, letters to the editor of the newspaper. So everyone that's involved in this process knew that this is going to rip up the nation in a few years, and it did. And so that's what I think about. One of the things, Mary Pitcock's listening to this right now, right, at home. And one of the things that, my grandmother and my grandfather and my parents and everyone taught me is just as soon as you know what the right thing to do is, like, that's what you do. And not doing that is what caused the Civil War, right? And nothing good came. The good that came from the Civil War is we had to correct via war where we shouldn't have, right? And I think that's, maybe you stop me if I'm going too far off the path, but there's a lot of people today that, back to the tribalism piece, that talk about it like it's going to be a war, it needs to be a war, and these people either haven't been to war or are taking it too lightly, or, we just talked earlier about it. It took almost 20 years to figure out what type of government we were going to have after we destroyed everyone's homes, then the British came back in 1812 and burned us down again. I mean, there's all these things that are negative that come out of war, right? Like nothing. The positive is like that's what it takes for liberation sometimes, and that's why we do it. But it shouldn't come to that, and it's like it is the last resort every time. And surely no one in America today can think that that's where we can't resolve our issues without going to arms against each other.
Yeah, that I mean, you know, when you really sit down and think about what that means, you know, fighting each other. I mean, that surely we know, you know, most of us, especially being connected through social media and the internet, we know people from all across the United States.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I just can't even imagine.
Well, and yeah, I mean, that will bring you back to the Civil War pretty quick and say, like, you know, U.S. Grant and Robert E. Lee were in the same class at West Point, right? Like, they knew each other well. And that's one thing, but they weren't going to die, right? Because they're generals, and that's how it worked back then, and still kind of does. But there were several, you know, lance corporals and privates that you know, knew the people that they shot in the face, for lack of a prettier term. But yeah, I mean that's something we want to avoid at, you know, every cost that we can, and B, of course we've got the systems in place. I mean, I think we could go on and on about the things that are wrong with our system, but we have the tools to fix it, and it's really just it's a mental block and it's a societal cultural block that's preventing us from fixing what ails us. But like I said, I do have a lot of hope, even though that's the picture that we're painting, and those are the divisive times that we live in. But I think on a day like today, we can say, like, here are the things, the self-evident truths that we talked about 244 years ago, wrote down, and declared this is what we stand for. That's a good guiding light to have, and if we can just go back there, which we can, that's what this day is for. You know, we'll get a good start in going there. You know, absolutely.
I couldn't agree more. You know, I think conversations like this, you know, with each other are so important. I think just being honest and talking and listening is really important, crucial, maybe.
Yeah.
Right now.
No, I mean the great point is you got to respect if you consider you know, if you're a Republican and you consider a Democrat your enemy, well, if that's the case, I hope it's not. I hope they're your friends, but either way, sitting down at the table is the only way that's going to resolve our issues, and treating them first as a citizen, an American, before they're a Republican or a Democrat or just, you know, the other side, is something that you know, has to be done for us to get anywhere. And you know, I think for us to, you know, fulfill what President Madison's vision was of bringing all the factions under the tent, extending the Union, to, you know, when I was thinking about what to say today on the lawn, I looked at what does unity mean, and it was the ancient Greek Aesop that said, what did he say? He said, "In unity there is strength." But so you know, he thought about this, you know, thousands of years ago, and then you know, Abraham Lincoln says, "A house divided cannot stand." Like, they know that being a unified nation is crucial to getting anywhere and having you know, preserving what we declared 244 years ago. And so I think that they know that the only, you know, durable United States of America is an America united. And you know, it's times like these that cause, you know, I use the reflection times to think about this, and I know not everybody does. They're thinking about shouting louder sometimes over the other side, but you know, I would implore everyone just to talk to someone that they disagree with, and sometimes that's tough to do. I know I've been very fortunate, and I think the military lends great to this. You meet people from all walks of life, and you know, in the one of the tough conversations I've had in the last 3 weeks post George Floyd's murder was, after we saw, a lot of protests, a lot of angst in the streets, and there was just this tension between white people and black people, right? And I called one of my best friends. It's a black man that lives in North Carolina, and I've never had this conversation with him, and I'm just like, how many of your white friends have called you and said, they're listening, and what's your view on the whole thing? He said, well, he's a fellow Osprey pilot, went to Harvard Business School, and now runs his own business in Charlotte, and presumably, hopefully he doesn't have to think about race every day, but he does, and that was just like this. You sit down, and I'm not even talking about someone on the other side. This is a friend, so I'm fortunate to have a friend to just have this weird, awkward conversation with, and and he ends it with saying, I didn't think that I needed this, but it matters that we're talking, right? And that's my friend, and so I seek out argument a lot of times, and that at the end of the day, I think when I start arguing with somebody about an issue, at the end of the day, I just want us to be okay with each other's position at the end of the day. I'm not trying to, I would like to persuade people to my side, but at the end of the day, at this point,
that's how we learn too.
Exactly. I think the end goals, and one of my main goals today is just let's be able to talk to each other.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the most enlightening conversations I've had was actually with my sister and my brother-in-law, who's black, and I was just honest and said I don't understand. I don't understand because it's not my world. I don't have the same perspective. I haven't had the same experiences. Can you help me understand? And fortunately for me, kind of like you, I have somebody I can go to that I trust and that I love, and they're willing to sit down and help me understand. But I think, if we approached it more with love and kindness and listening and truly listening to understand, maybe we could
get somewhere.
Maybe we could get somewhere on it, and hopefully we will. I've seen a lot of really good things also. I hate to harp on the negative because there's been a lot of really positive people being great leaders and good examples out there. But
and the bad thing, I guess, is that's only the first step. Like, first we have to listen to each other, and then we can get somewhere. So the hard work is ahead today. Being in these divisive times, but I think we have a guiding light, and we have the source document that we're celebrating today, that we can correct our course and use as a North Star.
Absolutely. Well, Justin, I appreciate you so much for coming today. Thank you. And also want to be sure and remember to thank Y100.5. Thank you for helping us today and broadcasting this for us. And then, as always, Pete Clark with Texas Made Security has been instrumental in making this happen, and we appreciate him very much. He loves working with us so much. That's why he's always smiling everywhere he goes. So be sure and just give him a huge bear hug next time you see him, after social distancing is over and done with. But anyway, thank you all for watching. Tim, did we have any questions from anyone that we could answer?
Just everybody complimenting your service and thanking you, and it's very interesting.
Awesome.
Thanks, and thank you, Krisa, for having me, and thank Tim for doing this. I hope everyone has a great Independence Day and is able to enjoy it, and hopefully have a time of reflection. That's what I'll be aiming for as well.
Absolutely, and don't forget to go drive around Graham, see the chalk art done by our artists. I've already been to several of the locations this morning, and they are phenomenal as always. So go see those, wave, say thank you to those artists who've been working on this literally overnight. It's incredible. And then, of course, 4th at the Fields tonight at the Young County Arena. And thank you to the parade sponsors as well.
Let me jump in. We've got the music that'll start along with fireworks at 9:20 tonight. So you can, even if you can't get out to the arena, you can do your own fireworks display to music starting at 9 o'clock right here. Actually, it'll be at 9:20.
Okay, I saw 9:05, but is it really 9:20?
It was 9:20 because of the fact that the sun needs to go down a little bit farther.
Perfect. We want to be able to see the fireworks.
You got it. So
awesome.
It'll be at 9:20. But thank you both, and thank you, Justin, for your service. We really appreciate you coming to the studio and doing this.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Thank you again. We're good.
right.
See you soon. I'll be back on to show you more artwork soon.